It's shaping up as a turning point in Syria's civil war. After years on the back foot in the north, the army continuing now its advance on what was the country's largest city, Aleppo. The Assad government's got help. Lebanese Hezbollah forces, Iranian fighters on the ground. They're backed by Russian air power. The rebels partially surrounded now inside the city as the government forces move on villages a dozen kilometers from the city limits. That has triggered a fresh exodus of tens of thousands of refugees north towards the Turkish border, a border that is shut, but with aid convoys coming in. One of the questions we'll be broaching is, has Ankara on the sly established what it's not gotten so far from NATO allies, a de facto buffer zone? What reaction can we expect from NATO, from the EU, one day after the German Chancellor visited Turkey? And are the latest advances jockeying for position ahead of international talks in Munich on Thursday and more substantive political talks? Or are talks just a smokescreen for Damascus and its patrons as they press their advantage? We're going to be gauging the mood, particularly among regional rivals like Saudi Arabia. Today in the France 24 debate, the Battle of Aleppo. Talking about it with us, Syrian activist Emma Suleiman. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back as well, former UN General Dominique Trinquant.
Good evening.
Julian Barnes-Dacey, Senior Policy Fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations, joins us.
Hi.
Nice to see you. And joining us from Ankara, Bilal Sambor, who heads the SESA Institute's think tank. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Before we talk about what's going on now, we're talking about a city, Aleppo, which is thousands of years old, home to 2.5 million when the uprising began. These are images you're seeing from October and 2012. According to the United Nations, there are 300,000 who remain today in Aleppo. Emma Suleiman, your reaction when you see those images?
It's definitely very sad, and it's heartbreaking to see what's going on today, especially to Aleppo, a city that I mean, I've been to Aleppo in 2012, and it was freed and it was liberated for the same time, and it was totally different than what we're seeing today. We're seeing a totally devastated city. People of Aleppo have left, and it's been under all type of bombardment, barrel bombs, and I mean it's really sad to see that Aleppo has finished, and I mean the old souk and the history of the city is no longer there. That's really sad.
When the uprising began nearly 5 years ago, it was an uprising. It wasn't a civil war yet. Julian Barnes-Dacey, Aleppo at the beginning stays out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a revolution, an uprising that was led by the periphery. This was not a revolution that was the urban classes revolting against Assad. Actually, the likes of central Damascus and Aleppo had it quite good. There had been a degree of modernization, liberalization. They were the ones profiting from the Assad era. In a sense, you had a revolution of those that had been left behind by the Assad regime, the traditional kind of rural constituents. And they are the ones that eventually moved into Aleppo from the surrounding countrysides. And so you've always had this tension within Aleppo between a lot of the local residents who've actually been opposed to the revolution and the fighters who have come in and actually seized control.
So who's left there today?
Well, it's a devastated city. You've had 5 years or 4 years of fighting in it. Millions or hundreds of thousands have already fled. I think you have an estimated 300,000 in East Aleppo, which is under rebel control, and then you have West Aleppo, which is still under regime control.
And they're still pro-regime, and that is in the pro-regime, but these people are pro-regime. And that's true. Aleppo took very long before joining the uprising in the beginning because of exactly what he said. The villages surrounding Aleppo were pro the uprising, but the people in the city, inside the city, and I have friends of mine who were defending the regime up until 2000. 2012 or early 2013, where they saw what was happening by their own eyes when the crackdown on Aleppo happened. They basically believed the regime for 2 years, and they were pro-regime until that time when they have left.
And of course, the thorny question is who's fighting who. We have some claiming that the rebels are all jihadists. Of course, others saying no, it's a wide spectrum of rebel groups.
Yes, first going back to Aleppo, we must remind that there was middle classes people and there was a lot of minority, Christian minority in Aleppo. And these people were, of course, for the regime because they thought that the regime will protect them from the jihadists and the jihadists coming from the surrounding villages. And so currently, as it said, after several years of war, a lot of destruction, a lot of people fleeing Aleppo. You've got parts of the city which is under the defense of the jihadists. And when I'm talking about jihadists, I'm talking about several groups, several different groups. And you've got the Assad army, which is supported by the Russian, of course, and the Hezbollah. And so this is a very important step forward at a time when people are supposed to discuss about peace in Europe.
Is it the jihadists against the government?
No, it's definitely not. I mean, in Syria, that's not only in Aleppo, that's in all of Syria. You have many parts. You have the Kurdish from one part, you have the rebellion. I mean, let's put things in perspective. Syria has emerged from a civil uprising, totally secular and pro-democracy and a democratic transition, into a civil war, and now into a very ugly scene of I mean, the worst you can imagine. Jihadists, ISIS, and Nusra al-Qaeda affiliates, many civil activists are still on the ground trying to fight, and they have absolutely no support. And this is what will happen if, I mean, I'm going too fast, but I think today, if Aleppo falls with the regime, those guys will join definitely the Islamic State. That's one of the key risks.
Bilal Sambour, is Aleppo going to fall?
Could you please repeat again?
Is the city of Aleppo going to fall to government forces? Are they going to take the city?
Well, we could know that Aleppo is the heart of Syria. It is cultural and historical city of Syria. Without, I mean, when in one sense, when we say Aleppo, I think we mean whole Syria because it is representative whole Syria. When opposition forces took over Aleppo, we consider this as a decisive victory against Assad regime. But now we realize that after Geneva III talks started, immediately Assad regime gains ground and gains a lot of countryside around Aleppo, and that means that we could say that if Assad regime and Russia reoccupy Aleppo again, that would be turning point in the civil war of Syria. And I think this such development will dramatically and radically change the geopolitics of Syria and Middle East.
Julian Barnes-Dacey, is Aleppo going to fall?
I don't think it is. I mean, I think the fight for Aleppo would be so long and vicious, and I don't think the regime has the capacity. The Russians can help the Assad troops on the ground surround the city, and I think that's what its aim was. Put it under siege, do what it's done elsewhere, and effectively try and starve them out. But I think, frankly, it's too strategic, it's too symbolic. The rebels are not going to lay down and walk away. You've got ISIS to the east of the city, who are prepared to come into it. You have fighters in Idlib province to the west of the city, where the route is still open, who are prepared to come into the city to fight the regime. So I think there's a long battle ahead. I don't think the regime has the capability or the desire to take it. I suspect that this is a...
Oh, they have the desire, that's for sure.
Well, I don't think they have the desire because they know that the cost would be too high. They want to use this to dictate the terms of a peace. Once they have Aleppo surrounded, the opposition is in such a bad position that the regime and the Russians think that they can then move to Munich or Geneva, wherever talks are happening, and say these are the terms and these are the only terms that you're going to be given?
I think that the opposition is split. And defending in a split area like that, you can't defending a very long time against a united army supported by
But
such
both sides
firepower.
determined, and we're talking about urban combat in this situation.
Sure, for sure. And urban combat, you've seen that also in Iraq, takes several weeks, several months. But what I'm saying is that facing the Assad regime, supported by Hezbollah, by Iran, and by the Russian, you've got split opposition, split groups,
and
you've got
not backed up by anybody today.
yeah. So
Wow.
because they are split, then the defensive position is very difficult to sustain, and that's where I think the force of the attack will probably take weeks. But at the end, they will win.
I mean,
A matter of weeks, you say?
I wouldn't say weeks. Homs is a much smaller city. Even Jober, let's look at Jober. I don't know if you know that. That's a very small town in Damascus. Took the regime like over 8 months to take over. Aleppo is much bigger. Starving the people would not have the city fall down. True that they are surrounded now by the Kurds from one hand, the regime from the other hand. It's only a matter of I think weeks probably to take Tel Rifat, but that doesn't mean that they're going to take Aleppo in matter of weeks.
I mean, a big factor is what the regional backers of the opposition do here. I mean, the Turks and the Saudis are clearly seeing the demise or the potential demise of the opposition here. They're not going to take this down lying. Will the US decide to back them up in sending in more arms? And the city is under siege, but weapons can get through, and my impression is that no one is prepared to let the opposition die. They may not be prepared to give them enough to win, but I think there's a definite certitude on the part of the opposition that we can't let this go now.
Okay, so what do you do?
But having Aleppo falls down means the end of...
Precisely, which is why the Saudis and the Turks won't let that happen.
What can the Saudi and the Turks do today? They don't have any umbrella to do anything to back up the rebellion. And rebellion, I mean, how much can you do when you're bombarded from the top and you have the militia, the other militias fighting you on the ground? How much can you do? And you have absolutely no backup. They are bombarding the hospitals as well. They are bombarding the civilians. I mean, you're really, really surrounded with no backup. How can you win? What are your factors to win or to resist?
I think a key issue is 2017. Everyone's betting on a new US president coming in, showing more assertion. And I think you keep them alive till 2017 is the impression, the strategy on the part of the opposition as backers now.
I think we're just looking at the picture. This is what's happening, not a discussion around the table, soldiers killing each other. And the Assad regime has been backed by the Russian. And for a very long time, they've been trained and equipped in order to win this battle.
Yes,
and I don't see the Russian letting Aleppo like that. So this will take time. But on the opposition, you're right, the Saudi and the Turk can do nothing. What they are doing is stopping the refugee, because when you've got refugee, you are slowing down the battle, because you can't fight a battle in a city where you've got refugee the same way that when you've got no refugee. So this is a way to slow down the offensive, is to let the civilian inside the battle. And this is the only way I see currently the Turks stopping the battle.
Bilal Sambour, do you agree that there is a callous calculation on the part of Turkey keeping the border closed in order to slow down that offensive by government forces?
Could you please repeat again your question?
Were our government forces, Syrian government forces, effectively being slowed down by keeping the border closed? Is it something deliberate on the part of Ankara, basically to slow down the government offensive, that they're not letting in those refugees?
Well, as you know, refugee problem actually is already a big problem of Turkey now. More than 2 million of people are living in Turkey, and after Aleppo crisis, now the Turkish government is worrying about a new flow of refugee. Now around 30,000 people are in the border of Turkey. Turkey allowed 10,000 comes in. But today Turkey increased its military mobility and capability in the border, because now Turkey considers refugee problem as a serious security military problem. And now Turkey wants to create or invite international community to build a power zone inside the borders of Syria. Now that means that Turkey tried to change its refugee policy after Aleppo crisis.
This de facto buffer zone, which is something the Turks have been calling for a long time, is it now happening?
Well, are they going to be prepared to police it? It's one thing to let refugees or stop refugees coming in there, but will the Turkish Air Force go head-to-head with the Russian Air Force if they fly over that area? My impression is probably not. Will the US go head-to-head with the Russian Air Force? Certainly not. So there's a long way from letting refugees establish camps there to really turning that into something that can be used as a safe zone in which rebel fighters will organize and take the fight to the regime, which is part of what the Turks and the Saudis would want out of a safe zone. It's not just a humanitarian end. It's a means of protecting the opposition and giving them a space to build up. And I think the Russians will react to that very forcefully, very quickly.
The regime, the Russian and the US, no one will allow this. I mean, to have this buffer zone, you need it under a legitimate umbrella, either international or US umbrella. International will be vetoed by the Russian. US is not willing. US, I mean, we know the Obama administration's politics. He would support more the PYD, the Kurds, but he doesn't trust the Sunni fighters, although these are the guys who are fighting the Daesh and the Islamic State.
So, for instance, the shooting down of that Russian fighter jet by Turkey, that was a one-off?
I think so. I think Turkey is in a very critical situation today. They're not on good terms with the U.S. They have the Kurdish issue from one end, and now soon they'll have the Russia on their border. So and again, I would like to comment on something said earlier. Putin is there to win, and Aleppo is on his goal. First, he wanted to secure what they call the useful Syria part. He did. Second part is taking Aleppo, and he is in to win. So he is going to take it. Third will be going for a ceasefire to negotiate local deals, I think.
Yes, I think we must keep in mind that against Daesh we've got two theaters, Iraq and Syria, and the Americans are focused on Iraq. The next step after Ramadi is Mosul, and they are preparing an offensive on Mosul in the weeks or months to come. They are not interested in Syria, and the battle of Syria is the battle of the Russian with the Syrian government. And so the impact of the American in Syria is very low, and the impact of the Russian in Syria is very important.
We're gonna get back to that point when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.